The NBA playoffs, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Never a dull game with those two teams. And, sure enough, came down to the wire. But we're here to talk about a lot of different stuff. So appreciate y'all joining. Let's get this show on the road.
The New Orleans Pelicans select Zion Williamson. And Holiday, the dribble penetration. So tough going to the goal.
Hello. Jeremy, how is it going? What is up? For those of you who don't know, we were kind of watching the game while in the studio. It's the first time we've done that.
Yeah.
Not not trying to brag or anything. We're pretty technologically dull here, but we're working on some stuff.
Mm-hmm. We're trying to make it happen during the dull off season, but not dull playoffs. Lord Jesus. Jesus, these games
The
so
playoffs
good.
have been incredible.
So good.
Yes, the Knicks and the Pacers. Very confusing series occurring over there. I think one of the most entertaining series I've seen in a long time, and I think that series in general is a good catalyst. I think you guys have seen the thumbnail for our show here today. Does market size matter? And I think it's super interesting to watch these teams who are sorry. Hello, John. For our audio listeners, that John comments, "Oh, my favorite primetime match: one of you guys versus their internet provider." Jokes on you. We both have the same internet provider.
Yes,
Both in the same
and
area.
same power company. That's why you didn't get a buy last night.
Yeah. But okay, yeah, just kind of going back to just the general topic here. Does market size matter? Jeremy, what kind of kicked off your desire to talk about this? How are you approaching this? Why are you approaching this? What are we doing here?
Well, first things first. Listener and Pelicans fan, make sure I say this correct. Eric Flint, he made a post about a week ago. That he thinks any of the small market teams making the finals would be a great matchup. Trying to be a fan of us in New Orleans not being a big glamour market, and I saw that and I was like, does that truly matter about winning? Are we just being a fan because we are used to trying to play the underdog, or is there a major big glamour market issue in the NBA?
And just I guess that those are some big and loaded questions that we're going to unpack here throughout the show. But
Yes.
you decided to look into that a little bit, and I guess what have you found? What have you seen? What is it? What kind of where does New Orleans? I guess where I'll start with this. Like, this is a Pelicans show, Pelicans podcast.
Yes.
Where do the Pelicans pop up in terms of market size and it's how it's measured in various ways?
Okay, so I went to a site, sportmediawatch.com, and they broke down 115 different markets. They use NBA, NHL, college football, and of course the NFL. And the New Orleans market is 51st in size. So that would be top half, but when it comes to the NBA teams, it's a fairly small market.
Where do you know where in the NBA New Orleans ranks?
They didn't say it per se, but I will say it was 28th, 29th in market size.
Okay. Yeah, I think we've seen similar data that basically says I think there's like maybe two markets that might be smaller, like Charlotte and Memphis, or I don't know. I'm making this up. Charlotte fans, if I'm wrong here, sorry. I'm pretty sure Memphis is one of them. But it's in that cluster at the bottom.
Yes.
With cities like OKC and Milwaukee. I think that's kind of the cluster there.
That's the cluster. The Memphis, Louisville, Oklahoma City cluster is where we're at.
Yeah. So I guess we'll approach it from a few different ways here. The first thing I want to talk about is, you said, is this really important to winning?
Yes.
what is your general opinion on that? And yeah,
My general opinion is no, that's not the end all be all for winning. Now, I will say when it comes to NBA players, they may want to have their addresses be in these major markets. Plus, Miami. I'm going to include Miami as a glamour market. They're 18th. My separator was top 10 for the teams that I used, but I included Miami because they either find ways or get stars to go there in their prime for the most part.
yeah. I mean, look, I think there's a lot of conversations, and of course, there's a lot of league partners on the media side that want to advertise larger markets, that want players to be in larger markets because that makes their job easier, or they think
Yes.
it's actually conducive to success from a business standpoint. Let's forget wins for a second, like from a hey, everybody gets paid standpoint. That these big markets need to be successful, should be successful. Um, but I think you bring up an important point here that it's not, first of all, like there's no guarantee that if you have the market size that the players want to play there, and B, like even even amongst those, there's kind of like hierarchy and tiers, right? Like
Yes.
Brooklyn isn't New York.
But it's in the New York market.
Clippers
Boston,
aren't the
the Clippers
Lakers.
aren't the Lakers. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Boston's a
um,
huge market, but people may want to go more to Miami, or if they're older, maybe Phoenix. Who knows?
yeah. So I think, look, we're not going to sit here and put on a cape for small markets and raise the bands,
No,
blow the trumpets, and be like,
that's not
"Hey,
mine.
you can win in a small market, and players need to become in a small market." I think there is a absolute fact in the NBA, and this is from my numerous conversations with players, agents, NBA executives, that if it was left up to most players, they would pick like one of 5 cities to play, to work in,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
And, if I don't care who needs to hear it, New Orleans is never going to be that city that players will choose, that will go out of their way and choose. You can hear all of the team-led propaganda. "Oh, yeah, CJ McCollum chose to play in New Orleans. Drew Holiday wanted to be here." That's part of being a good soldier. That's what the money is for,
Yeah.
as they would say,
Yes.
Um, but a lot of players are very cognizant of their own image and their brand, and the fact that they're going to be working in a city, and their success to some level depends on fan buy-in, whether that's directly tied to their paycheck or just their overall happiness and mental state. And they know that when they're in these cities, the best way to win over people is to fully embrace the city. And they do. Most of these guys, when they get to cities like New Orleans or Oklahoma City, in Charlotte, they're like, "Hey, you know what? This is cool. Like I'm doing
And
good here."
and you have to placate to the paying customer. Like that's just smart business. You have to pay. If I'm going to say this place is a dump, why am I spending my hard-earned money? Why am I giving you my season ticket holder? Why am I going to be a season ticket holder of a place that doesn't appreciate me? So they
Yeah.
have to pay that front.
Yeah. I mean, it's a business. Everyone understands it. But you know, it is a fact of the matter that if you were to have max level cap space in New Orleans, if you were to have max level cap space in Los Angeles, one of those teams is getting that max level player, right? And that isn't the team in New Orleans. Now, of course, there are exceptions to every rule. Like there
Yes.
have been markets that have been successful in pulling away free agents from bigger team markets, right? Hartenstein was a Nick and he signed with the Thunder. Lamarcus Aldridge played in Portland, a tiny, tiny market. That's another market that we forgot in the cluster of the bottom.
Yes.
Played in Portland. He became a free agent, held meetings with the Suns and the Lakers, who were also huge markets,
Yes.
and thought of as destination places. And he ended up deciding to play with the Spurs. That's where he wanted to
And
play.
they all offered max contracts too. So it wasn't
Right.
like, he took the highest bidder.
Yeah. And so, it you will have instances where some players end up picking the smaller market, but by and large, it holds true that some of these teams that are like the Charlottes of the world, they're just not going to have that kind of purchasing power. So that kind of begs the question twofold. One, why have teams like New York and Los Angeles gone through large patches? Like I'm talking about half a decade plus stretches. With New York, it's been even longer than that, where they've just been flat out terrible.
And having to go the quote unquote non-glam market, small market route of going through the draft and hopefully, do an Anthony Davis level trade to bring a star back to their team.
But yeah, so like, so I'm asking you, why is it even Chicago? Chicago's been
Yeah.
terrible forever. Why are these,
Well,
why are
well,
these teams in with everything supposedly going for them? Why haven't
well
they found
to, to
sustained
to
success?
echo Amina Hassan, ownership is the biggest competitive advantage in sports. So if you don't have an infrastructure built in, as someone said in the chat and tried to make our podcast 7 minutes instead of the 30 to 45 we're trying to get, yes, recent successes of Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Indiana, etc., they have, debunked this. But part of that also is they're willing, some of those teams, one of those teams, not, and Shamit's going to bring them up, for the most part, are willing to go into the luxury tax. Oh, you know which one I'm going to talk about, despite I believe they are, to me, they are the marquee, they are the standard for non-glamour team who doesn't spend a lot in the tax and consistently wins. But yes, recent teams have shown that they're willing to try to compete for a championship by going into the tax, despite being non-glamour markets. And they've gone different routes. Like we could talk about, OKC now is thriving because they tore it down and built it up. Minnesota didn't go that. Minnesota, they had Cat, they got Ant. They gave away the picks. They brought in Rudy Gobert, and then they've said they had enough young people, enough young players, and they've gone to 2 straight conference finals. So it's not to me, it's more about leadership and ownership and what are you allowed to do and not to do.
Yeah. So look, I think there's now we're entering like in the weeds of this topic, right? Because I think
Mm-hmm.
there was a comment that brought up, Mike, shout out Mike, who is a regular on our shows, and make sure to check out his show and all the stuff he talks about regarding the Celtics. But Mike brings up a really good point where he says, I think the thing that makes a huge difference in the NBA versus other leagues is how the lottery largely locks players into the same team for 7 years. And I think
Yes.
this is a discussion that's kind of like worth having in the larger context of markets is just this general idea of the lottery. Is it fair practice to players and to labor in general to kind of, hey, like this is, like I think there's a very strong contingent of voices out there in the online space that are like, this is just not fair to the players. They need to be able, they should abolish the draft. Players need to be able to pick where they're going to work, and it should kind of work as an extended free agency space. What are your thoughts on the lottery and how it relates to all of this and the market size and all that?
I am over for 93% pro labor. I believe that disbarring and banning the draft will bring the immediate shutdown of a salary floor. And
What do you mean by that?
so we know there's a rookie wage scale for draftees. They want to be able to have that cheap labor to build their drafts on. If you say just use that, have this free agency the same. If I'm an owner, I'm immediately saying, okay, the salary floor used to be like 70% instead of the 92% it is right now. Because if you're going to tell me I have to have them as free agents and I don't have a quote unquote fair shot, an equal shot for the lottery, I need something that I can have revenue sharing. I need to have a different way to have my profits balanced out. And once we talk about having not paying players, not having a salary floor, it's going to be crippling to labor, in my opinion.
So what if there was a contract where there is a salary floor, right? Like you don't change the salary floor. All you're getting rid of is the actual draft. So, there let's say for example, it kind of worked like the mid-level exception, right? You have
Okay.
a rookie exception, let's just say that. A broad scale rookie exception. And each team gets some percentage of the cap allocated to that exception, right? Let's say it's $15 million a year. That's a lot, but that's a lot of money.
Yes.
Now, what if it was a system where it was like, okay, you are a team in a market that's going to spend all $15 million dollars on that one player, right? No matter what. Or you're a team that's got a really good scouting system and really believes that they can find the gems and has good relationship with agents. And you're like, cool, I'm going to take 3 shots at $3 5 million players. You know what I mean? Like, what
Hmm.
if it was I still have to hit 90% of the salary cap as a salary floor as a team to meet the minimum overall spending. Um, and this is the structure. There's just no, you know,
There's no lottery.
dog and pony show in Brooklyn that I'm going to be
That's a
attending later on
that's
where
another
people put the
aspect.
wrong hat on.
That's another aspect of it that I don't believe the business partners would want to deal with. Like, I don't think we're. Oh well, if they do like recruiting, like if they do it like collegiate recruiting, and they just sit down and they have 3 caps in front of them and say they're going to put their cap on, and they make that the dog and pony show, which I really hate about National Signing Day. But if you can keep the salary floor, which I think that's a pie in the sky thought process. Why
It's
not?
not. You just. I don't think it's a pie in the sky thought process. It's in the CBA. Like you. It'll.
I'm just
It's collectively bargained. You
it's
know.
collectively bargained. I just do not believe that. I will go with the scenario. It will be fine if everything else stays the same. I'm just putting it out there that I don't believe that will be the thought process of of ownership groups saying, yeah, you can have more freedom and you can,
I think it's the opposite. I go in the other direction where
okay.
if you create a system where you're abolishing the draft, I think small market owners are going to cry poor, and instead of all these aprons, you're going to get a hard cap, like an actual. You cannot
No
spend
one wants
above
that.
this number hard cap.
That no one wants that. No one wants
No, I
that.
think people want that. I think
Who?
people want that.
No, I
I
think
think a
owners
lot of
want that.
owners want that.
Oh
I
no,
think Neil Benson
owners.
would want that.
Okay. The Joe Public fan, I don't believe wants that.
Oh, of course not.
Oh, Gail Benson 100. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The restrictions that will be placed on labor to get this free market for draftees are things people don't want. Next thing you know, if you think you're blaming the union for how teams are broken up now, just imagine a team that is having $25 million luxury tax bill now has to just immediately slash players with guaranteed contract and amnesty all these players and destroy your team in that facet. I don't think anyone wants that.
I don't know. I mean, look, I think there are consequences to anything where whatever kind
Mason's
of.
at the door.
I know Mason's at the door. Right? Mason couldn't be here tonight. He got hit by a rogue wave. He wanted everyone to know that an unexpected event happened.
Yes.
And we don't mean that in a negative sense.
Apparently there are rogue wave supporters of Shamit, and one of them is one of my closest friends, and I don't like how this is going one bit. But not to go on a tangent. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, look, let's forget about like the hard cap in general, but I think that is relevant, right? Like I think the small market owners cried poor during these last set of negotiations.
Yep.
They're like, we can't compete with the Ballmers of the world, which is like on a surface level, I think it's a hilariously stupid argument. Billionaires crying poor, whatever, like cry me a fucking. But
Yes.
that was the merits of their argument. And it was collectively bargained that we're going to place additional restrictions and additional handicaps on these teams that are theoretically going to bring the league into greater balance, right? The idea is you can't hoard all of these players indefinitely just because your owner wants to keep paying them. There's going to be increasing set of penalties, both
Yes.
financial and from a team construction
Yes.
standpoint. Wow, we are. We're about to get in some like really like loaded questions here. I was like,
Yes. Yes.
were the small market owners justified to ask for that to
I,
compete against the bigger markets?
I'm gonna say no. I can't believe I'm saying this, but what's my man in New York? Now, granted, he has the biggest media market and he can put his tickets. James Dolan. I was so much on point with him. Like, why are you broke bastards acting like? Why are y'all acting poor? Why do you guys want to feed off my revenue stream if you can make it yourself? We have to work together, sure, but as someone who watches baseball, I cannot stand the levels owners would go for a revenue sharing check. I can't. It's detrimental to labor. And someone here you go. I want a hard cap like the NFL. No, you're used to a hard cap in the NFL. That's the difference. That's all you know. Also, the BRI is the basketball revenue is so the scale is so much different for the NFL, and there are no fully guaranteed contracts in the NFL. There are ways to get out of it.
There's no
ways
such
to
thing
get
as basketball related revenue in the NFL. Jeremy.
You know, well, of course, the football revenue, but there are no guaranteed contracts, and you can get out of that funny money in the New York second in ways you can't in the NBA, unless you are saying I don't like the labor force and I'm pro ownership.
I don't know, man. I feel like there is a hard cap argument. Like, look, you have a normal salary cap, and instead of having a first apron and second apron, it's the fucking second apron, right? Or you
Yeah.
can even have sorry, let me rephrase that. You can even have an apron over the tax, and then whatever that second apron number is, that is the hard cap. You cannot go over it. So you can operate in the space between the tax and the first apron. That's a one band where you can operate, and the second band that you can operate is that first apron and whatever that hard cap is. I don't know, man. I if you remove the idea of the draft and you were like, okay, cool, I can see the merits of just having that hard cap.
I can see the merits. I would always say break the bank. Like, I would rather have an owner who is going to pay the luxury tax bill and break the bank than one that has an openly capped number. Like, I'm not naive. There are owners who have, hey, you can't go past the first apron. You can't go
Break
past
the bank other places though. You know what I mean? Like, look, hear me
fair.
out.
Okay.
Like,
Okay, go ahead.
let's say you are let's say you're the Denver Nuggets. No, let's use the Cleveland Cavaliers for example, right?
Okay.
The Cavaliers are slated to be well in the second apron because of Mobley's extension, and shout out to Mobley for becoming an All NBA level player, becoming a Defensive Player of the Year, earning the ability to get paid that extra amount, that 30% amount. Okay, you have that. I think it's a separate conversation to be had. That should teams be penalized for their guys being successful? No, I don't think so. I think that's a separate conversation.
I will just quit the. Hey, yes, they should have like the Zach Lowe 25%, and even though you're paying them 30%, I think that should have been in the CBA. But we can continue.
Yeah. So let's say they're at this number, and now they have to redo their finances, and I think it's just a way more. People going to complain. I think there is a valid complaint about, okay, well, there's going to be less continuity among teams. There's less of like, okay, I'm going to keep this core 3-4 players together. I'm going to go through the growing pains, go through the battles, and then eventually overcome them. There's going to be less of that. But I think in some respects, it's a far more interesting league where you have to be extremely judicious with your resources. You're picking, 2 players, 3 players that you're building around. And then you're like, cool, like what are we doing in order to stay A, relevant from a winning perspective, B, giving us a chance to win the title? Because now if everyone's got the same playing field, in my opinion, these small market owners who cry poor literally can't cry poor at that point because there is a limit to how much you can spend. They can't be like, well, we're simply not paying the tax because we can't compete with these other teams. This is it. This is as far as you can go. And if you don't go there, well, obviously, just like it is now, you're not utilizing all of the resources available to you. But I think a league with more turnover and players going from one place to another, more teams having the opportunity to win, more teams having the opportunity to showcase their scouting departments, taking advantage of these rookie scale contracts, taking advantage of winning around the edges, taking advantage of building out their organizations. You just like from a services standpoint and a resources standpoint, that stuff I think it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, there is no hard cap in how much you can spend in your analytics department or on your coach or on how many people you bring in the department in general. Like there is no hard cap for that. And yes, you should use any resource outside the mandate man. Oh, I can't talk. It's late. The press cap that you just a press cap that you have on other resources. I agree with you there.
Okay, but you're not bought in. You don't think
No,
it'd be a
no,
product.
no, no. I'm just, like I
It's a
can
better
agree with
product when
you.
teams stay together. You think?
Is there a better product when teams stay together? I can't say yay or nay. I will say that I believe continuity helps. And if I, especially if I grew this team from the ground up, if I did, draft, I bring these teams together, we grow together, we try to get to the next step. I don't think that there should be a cap that now breaks it up. And now you have to, we have to find a new way. Like we did the hard part. We found these players. We did, there should be some type of tax breaks. And yeah, I'm sounding real GOP with this, but there should be some type of tax breaks given to teams who have did the hard work and quote unquote picked themselves up by their bootstraps. It sounds real terrible. And are winning together.
Yeah, I think it's a fair argument. I've seen the argument the league is better when there's dynasties around. Um, I don't know if that's nostalgia speaking or if that's like empirically based or not. I don't know. I do think
I think OKC is going to find a way to bring a new dynasty anyway. I think dynastic
yeah.
teams are inevitable. It doesn't matter how you stop ownership organizations. The smart ones figure out.
Yeah, and look, in something that is inherently random, there are going to be events that occur that kind of defy probability anyway,
Yeah.
but that's just because that's, over a large enough sample, over a long enough time, things are going to occur. And so you may just get multiple time champions out of just like sheer randomness, right?
Yeah.
Or you may get first time champions out of sheer randomness. Like there's elements of this that are like very very difficult to quantify there. But
And to tie it all to what we was how we started this conversation, that was one of the points I wanted to bring up. A lot of this is also luck. It doesn't matter how big your market is. Granted, players want to go to certain places, but you can get lucky and find a team who wants to trade you Steve Nash 2.0 for their center. Or, I will say this with Indiana, and this is where I think this is the team that me and Shamit disagree on the most. I always feel that there are the tempo for non-glamour market owners.
template.
Yes, we barely graze the tax if we ever go there. We find these second draft guys, or we find guys later in the draft. Like Reggie Miller I don't believe was a top 5 pick. And we constantly are trying to win. We're trying to find different ways from finding, Paul George, Danny Granger, like I said, Reggie, Jermaine O'Neal, and Ron Artest, Steven Jackson. They constantly find these guys on second drafts. Like I can't think. Tyrese Haliburton. They find guys and they find ways to build without lucking up in the lottery or getting big time free agents. They make the right trades without going into tax. And I believe that should be I think that's what owners want that are in non-glamour markets. Your thoughts?
I mean, like I don't know that we disagreed too much on the Pacers, right? Like I don't like I thought the whole Dell Demps model of young vets is a viable model. I think you especially if you just look at the history of draft picks and you're like, okay, the overwhelming majority of these draft picks are not going to give me anything of value in the first 4 years, right? If they ever do, they're just not. They're going to take 4 years to outproduce an average veteran minimum contract. Why should I wait around for that production to kick in when I can exchange this as currency and buy that production now? Especially if I am giving myself maybe not the same amount of upside relative to both the contract and like the player's production itself, but I'm giving myself some upside, right? If you get the 22-year-old who's already
Yep.
played 4 years in the league, yes, he is going to be more expensive, probably at least double what his like rookie contract was.
Mhm.
But that 23-year-old is not done growing, and there
Yeah.
are right tail outcomes if you were to model them that these guys can hit. Haliburton is living proof of that. I mean, obviously they got him on his rookie contract, so it's a little bit different. But the one the couple that they really hit on were Sabonis and Oladipo. Oladipo had already been given his number. I believe OKC gave him that number after
I
he was
think.
traded for
Yep.
Serge Ibaka.
Hmm.
Um, okay, and then they got Oladipo, Indiana got Oladipo, and he turned into an All NBA level player, and that is a right tail outcome that they hit on. Brogdon was rookie of the year. Milwaukee got expensive; they didn't find a use for him. There was a sign-in trade that occurred. They dipped into the restricted free agency market. They gave up a draft pick,
Yep.
I believe,
Yep. A
to
first and a
secure
second.
Brogdon. And that's that same concept of like, okay, like that draft pick could have been somebody, but I got Malcolm Brogdon. And what did Malcolm Brogdon do? They made the playoffs a bunch of times over and over
Yep.
and over again. They were solid on the guard position. So like I don't think I think that is a viable strategy. I'm not a believer in this idea of I think one like I think teams need to be like really, really good at evaluating and making these plays because for every one of like the guys that Indiana's hit on repeatedly, there have been teams that tried on Marvin Bagley. Like, you know,
That hit real close to home.
right. And even the Pacers themselves, they got into it with DeAndre Ayton. They gave him the max.
they signed.
They gave DeAndre Ayton the max.
They signed James Wiseman.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. But
But that's the same thought process.
right. So it's like you're gonna have misses just like you will have in the draft process. But like
Mhm.
I think, you can there's two parallel lanes here. And I think if you were to try to mitigate luck and the element of luck in all of this, there's two ways to do it. One, the Indiana way for going for more proven commodities. There's a lot less volatility there
Yep.
in the guys that they're getting. But the other way is to go in the direction of OKC, and you just get so many picks and you get so many bites at the apple that like you're just overwhelming the odds where it's like, yeah, you may have 15 bad picks, but that one pick that hits and provides you surplus value. Like they selected Usman Jank at 8.
And they gave 3 picks for him.
Did they really? Is that how they got?
Yeah, I mean, I think they went into some triangular trade. It was them, Detroit, and I think New York traded some Washington picks. It was a hope, but OKC gave away a lot to give up Usman Zane.
I thought
But also,
whatever it was.
yeah,
They selected. I'm pretty sure it was 8. I'm pretty sure it was 8.
8 or
Because
11, something like that.
Sohan
But
went 9. Whatever it was. But
no,
the
Dyson
point
went
is,
8, so it had to be 11 because Dyson went 8 that draft.
the Pelicans had Dyson
Yep.
at 8. So
Mhm.
whatever it was, he went.
Yeah.
He went. I think either
He
like
went
9 or 10,
lottery.
right?
Yep.
But the point is, they valued him more than they valued Jalen Williams. And Jalen Williams, same draft class, Jang was selected prior to him, right? And so, bad pick, awesome pick. And so you can counteract a lot of luck in two ways, and you're just kind of controlling the space where risk is acceptable to you. What kind of risk do you like? And when you're a big market like Los Angeles, you get that third option of entering a different market, which is the free agency market, and
Yes.
that's something that's not accessible to Indiana or OKC.
And spending into the luxury tax, while I understand people the stigma that the Pelicans have, you could also try to trade away your depth for Russell Westbrook and his $45 million contract and pay the
Yeah,
luxury tax and give away a pick.
yeah.
Well, speaking
Okay,
of
I just looked it up. Jang
okay,
went 11,
mm-hmm,
just traded to OKC, and then Dub went 12. So it's back to back picks. But the
backpack.
guy they picked prior was Jang.
Speaking of Dub, if you know me, you know that I like to troll about J Dub's success. I think he's a really good player. I want to start with that. We're coming post game. After the game, he put up 34 and was hand in hand with what SGA were putting, in an incredible game. He was on the road. We need this. We don't want. We want to stop this, and we want to end it in our home on our home court. In Game 5, he played like a superstar tonight. So no analytics account. You're gonna see this. You're gonna hear this. This is me saying that he came to play and he played like a star tonight. And it's on the record, so you could clip it and play it in the loop and throw it in my face every time I call him a role player. A
Shout
very
out to
good
my
role player.
guy. Shout out to my guy Gabe. Dub still isn't Jalen Brown. Uh, Mike Weisberg has a good point that like every team that's kind of won in the past decade is one with sort of actual team building. And then he says except for the Lakers, and I think that is not 100% accurate. He's right that like look, the Lakers simply never win if LeBron decides he doesn't want to be in LA, right? Like
Yeah.
that is they had a 6-year stretch of being the worst team in the NBA by record, right? They had like a 24% winning percentage over those 6 years prior to, and even the year LeBron got there, that first year they were bad enough that they ceded the 4th overall pick to the Pelicans when the Anthony Davis thing. But the thing is, they had so many high picks in that stretch that they were able to cobble together and go trade for a superstar that wanted to
Yes.
be there, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like yes and no. Like they didn't, it wasn't necessarily team building that won them that, but it kind of was at the same time. The guys that were left over, Caruso that helped win the championship, Kuzma, all of them, like yes, you need LeBron. Every team needs,
Yeah.
some kind of luck. Like, Denver doesn't win if they aren't able to successfully trade for Aaron Gordon. They didn't draft, Aaron Gordon. Like they don't win if that doesn't happen, right? Like, you gonna say something?
Oh no, I was gonna say, we play to win the title. Me personally, when it comes to organization, if you can get to the conference finals, you've done your job. Not for the most part, it's just players and coaches doing their thing.
Right.
And the Lakers were twice during the LeBron Anthony Davis era, so it's pretty good to me.
I do think the teams that sort of need to be studied are these teams that have sort of outsourced rebuilds and not done one themselves. And of course, like OKC kind of went through like a separate, like a small and swift one. They blew up a playoff team with that Chris Paul
Yep.
to kind of enter a rebuild, which is most owners don't have the appetite to be like, hey, we made the playoffs this year. We're actively going to bow out of them.
Well, it also helps to have a GM who, hey, we brought to the finals, mini Western Conference, and I can do it again, and then it's proven right yet again. Like that's insane.
Right. And so the teams that have like done it without like a true rebuild, the Celtics have been, the historic example of this. Like Danny Ainge never wanted to rebuild it. Some of it requires pulling the trigger off of dying team concepts when it's time to pull the trigger. Some of it requires getting lucky and the Nets giving you their entire future for over the hill stars, right? But despite that, they're able to find guys like Isaiah Thomas who were contributed. They're able to
Yes.
draft guys like Kelly Olynyk who contributed. So like they were Jay Crowder for the longest time, right? Like those were pieces that they played with, and then eventually like the bets that the outsourcing started paying off, and they got Jalen and Jason and et cetera and et cetera and et cetera, and that the rest is history. The Houston Rockets for the longest time they don't rebuild. They just retool. They transitioned from the the Luis Scola,
Kevin Martin,
Kev Kmart,
that
that era to Harden. And prior to that, it was Yao and T-Mac, like it was in the Harden era went through Dwight, it went through Chris Paul, it went through CP3, like that's what Morey did. And of course Morey left and it became different. And then now their team is full of all these draft picks that they have, right?
Yep.
So I don't know.
Too. And they changed ownership to go from we're never going to tank to let's try tanking, and it's worked out.
Right. And so look, there's multiple pathways. There's even more pathways to failure. But I think what we're all in agreement here is that it requires a lot of resources from the team from an infrastructure standpoint to be successful, because you can't just pick one lane and try to be successful in it. You got to operate in multiple lanes. The Thunder, they have all these draft picks, but two of their biggest pieces right now, Caruso and Hartenstein, were acquired through free agency and through trade.
And their two best players are part of the Paul George trade.
Right.
We can talk about that. So the two biggest role players are free agents. The two best wing players are via the Paul George trade.
Yeah. I'm with you. So, Jeremy, does market size matter?
Big size never matters. Anyway, thank y'all for joining us live after a great playoff game. Subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. The audio version will probably be out tomorrow, and we'll see you guys next week.
Adios.